We're live.
Good evening and welcome, everyone. This is the regular scheduled Finance Committee meeting, and today is November 18th, and it is 5:15. Present, we have on the committee members, Councillor Fournier, Councillor Tremble, Councillor Dean, and Councillor Beck. Other councillors present are Councillor Leonard, Councillor Hawes, Councillor Pelletier, and Councillor Miller. We also have present with us tonight, David Little, Director of Finance. And first on our agenda is the department update.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Typically, the first Finance Committee meeting after an election, we do a little presentation on the Finance Committee itself, that when we meet and what we would talk about. That information has already been uploaded and is available to all of you. So instead, we're taking a little turn to update you on the Finance Department itself, where we are, what we have for issues, projects that are ongoing, just so you have a little feel for where we are and what's going on. So as the Finance Director, I oversee the Finance Department, which also includes and overseeing the Information Services Department, Central Services, and Building Maintenance. The Finance Department itself, some of our primary every day-to-day type duties is that we review and reconcile the bank activity. We oversee the city's weekly payroll processing, that is gathering all of the time cards. That the other departments will have payroll clerks that enter their time, but our department, particularly a staffing person that we have, will review all of the edits, look for anomalies, compare them to city policy, federal law, state law, and then process, print the checks, and get them out for distribution. Also the direct deposit files to the bank. We review and approve, input all invoices for city vendor payments. That's on every other week, usually. Sometimes we'll do back-to-back weeks, depending on the timing of the calendar. That is primarily driven by GA payments. We always try to make sure that landlords get their GA rent payments on the first week of the month. So if that requires us to do back-to-back payable runs, we will do that as needed. We prepare, assist other departments, and then publish all the city's requests for proposals for any bids, like all the ones that we'll be seeing here tonight. All of these flowed through the Finance Department and our purchasing coordinator. That includes any questioning periods, addendums, or any other things that need to get added to them as they're being posted, as well as opening them and preparing the bid tabs. And then we assist all departments in any questions in these areas or others as they needed. We just recently this year added the grant writer position. That position will go and look for grant opportunities, help departments apply for those grants, and try not to leave money on the table if there's stuff that we can do as a city that we can get more grant money and assist us with various programs. We also reconcile and issue and prepare the city's W-2s and Affordable Care Act forms for the employees, and all the vendor 1099 forms, and do all the federal reporting related to those. And then two of our more significant annual projects are, of course, the preparation and presentation with the city manager of the city manager and budget, and the city's third-party audit review. Both of those are significant undertakings, taking several months or more to put together. Our challenges, which have been pretty much the same over the last few years, has been staffing. The Finance Department had pretty stable staffing for a long time. But over the last few years, particularly since the shift where previous Finance Director Debbie Laurie moved into City Manager's position, I moved into the Finance Director's position. The Assistant Finance Director position was empty for nearly a year before we filled it. That person was here approximately a year, decided to leave. It has been empty ever since. We are in process and very close to having a potential position filled for that. So that will be very helpful. But being down that key role who does a lot of assistance, especially particularly with the audit, because that's another accounting person that's in the office. Most of the staff are not don't do day-to-day accounting work like we would need to do for the annual audit. They're reviewing policy, comparing things to practices, data input, very important work, very detailed work, but unrelated to the specific stuff that we need done during the audit. So those are the more recently, just this year, over the past few months, both our payroll position and the grant writer were unexpectedly out of the office for an extended period of time. So that needed to, as any department, there are things that still need to get done on a regular basis. We still have to pay employees, so that diverted other employees pulling in assistance as we can in other departments, or diverting our current employees to do other tasks, cross-training, to make sure that day-to-day activity still got done while they were gone. The grant writer is now back in the office full-time. And our payroll person has been working a reduced schedule, so they're slowly getting back in. I anticipate that person will probably still be out close to through the end of the year. But it is getting done. The HR department has assisted us quite a bit with making sure that the weekly payroll is still getting processed and employees are still getting paid. So in addition to those, the staffing issues, the other things that really come into play with us is federal and state law, Department of Labor requirements, and pronouncements issued by the Governmental Accounting Standard Board. All of those things impact us. Every time something new comes out, we have to see, along with the HR department, how it impacts the city. Do we have to modify pay scales? Do we have to modify practices? Do we have to modify procedures, benefits, to make sure that we're still in compliance with both the federal and the state law? And with the GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board pronouncements, those are two significant ones came out last year, which required a review of all computer software programs throughout the city and any contracts that may have been related to those. They deemed that those types of things needed to be disclosed as part of the annual audit. Third-party agreements, like our parking fund and the Cross Insurance Center that are run by third parties, those had to be additionally scrutinized. In addition, not every year, but it seems like it recently, they've come up with more ways of what, someone has determined to be a better way to disclose or a better way to show something on the financial statements. And that usually takes a significant undertaking for both us and the external auditors to review those, determine what needs to get done, and then figure out how to test it and how to present it. So we've been kind of hit with a few things. The impact of those over the last couple of years, mainly from the council's perspective, that sort of is out there for you to see directly is the filing of the financial statements. In 2021, 2022, both of those years, the statements were issued in March. Typically, our statements are issued before the end of December. And then this past year, they were not issued until July. We've had plenty of conversations with those during that time period. All of the things that we mentioned before, plus issues. It wasn't just us, it was other departments throughout the city that were lacking staffing. It was the auditors that were lacking staffing. It was a statewide issue. And with those new pronouncements, it was essentially sort of a perfect storm for financial purposes. And but we got there, and we are now working on our current audit. We've done quite a bit of the work. There's still a lot of work left to be done. Again, there's a lot of grant testing that is part of that, with CDBG having them being staffed is certainly more helpful than it was last year. Some of them are still getting in and still getting their feet wet, so it's still taking a bit of a delay to get things that we need for the auditors, but we're nowhere near where we were last year. We were sort of working on our goal to try to get the audit completed and published before the end of December this year. I think realistically, we probably will not make that timeline, but I do expect that they will be issued in January. We're in constant contact with the auditors. We're sending them information every day. They're sending us back their test lists. We're talking about when they will come back. They were here on site for 3 weeks. And there's still some outstanding items at a number of departments, Cross Insurance Center, the airport, the grant testing with CDBG, the school department. All of that stuff needs to get wrapped up and brought in, and then we can start working on the general fund piece. Again, doing as much as we can. But it also will come down to their ability. As I mentioned in the memo, the number of accounting firms in the state of Maine 10 years ago were 65. There's now only 19. Those 19 are still doing the same number of audits for the same number of municipalities. And so scheduling is stuff that used to take 1 or 2 days or maybe a week to turn around, could take several weeks, if not longer, depending on how many other communities also have audits. Our struggles, as I mentioned in the memo, are not unique to us. There are other communities in the state of Maine that have not issued their financial statements. Some of them have not issued even their 23, so as late as ours were. There are other communities, as of the date I wrote this memo last week, Augusta, Auburn, Biddeford, Belfast, all still do not have a 23 report available on their website, and Ellsworth was in that group. Last update we did with the council, but they issued theirs in August of 24, so they are now at least caught up to date. And again, it's the same struggle. It's staffing at the municipal level, it's staffing at the audit level, and it's finding time to divert and dedicate those resources while still making sure the day-to-day operations are still getting done. Some of the other projects that we have in the pipeline is we have a couple of big bids coming up. One of them is for the Brownsfield hazardous waste cleanup of the alert building at the airport. As well as the outside realtor RFPs, which came before the committee roughly a couple of months ago. The committee asked us, we did a combined one to have one realtor. The committee asked us to go back out to bid and split the bid between residential and commercial property. Those will open this week on Wednesday. So hopefully we'll get some good responses and we'll be able to move forward with that. That is required before the city can take any action on any tax-acquired property, because by law now they have to be sold through a realtor. So hopefully that will get us some traction and be able to move forward on some of those properties. And again, in January, we will start the process for the city managers' recommended budgets by starting to talk with departments and getting their needs and putting stuff together. And that would usually go through March before the city manager will present her budget to the council for us to then begin the workshops. And the last project that's everyone's waiting for is the city hall renovation. It is tentatively on schedule still for April. Then after that, we'll determine when we can move back in, but that will be that's a large coordination between multiple departments in order to not disrupt service to the citizens and be able to move everybody back there. So we'll coordinate that as best we can and in phases as we need to in order to get everybody back to City Hall and back open to the public. So that's sort of what's going on. Welcome for any questions, if anybody has any.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Beck.
Have we done the RFP for auditing services?
That will be coming up in the next couple of months. The RFP for banking, for RFP for audit services, will go out early next year. And I get a review. We may also have the banking contract one as well. I have to review. We're either on our last year, or it'll need to go out again. So those will be two significant RFPs. But they are in the pipeline.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councilor Leonard?
So I wanted to focus firstly, I'll just do one at a time, but firstly on the staffing issues that the department has had. And thank you for being very clarifying and what those issues were. So looking at the numbers that you presented regarding the entire state, now we only have what was it, 19? Yeah. So to me, that sounds like we have to be much more aggressive attracting people to the area and be much more competitive in order to gain more financial labor for the city overall. I know that there are multiple ways to be competitive in regards to attracting people, whether it's part-time remote work and things, but I guess the main question I want to ask is like, what are our strategies that we have right now as a city to attract that financial labor force? Because it's incredibly important to make sure that your department is as effective and ready to go as possible, because you touch every single department in the
Right.
city.
And I will say it's been a challenge, posting with the assistant finance director position. It took a while, and the first time, and it took a while the second time to find what we feel is qualified candidates. It's very rare to get somebody that actually has prior municipal experience. And it was a very small pool of clients. The strategies, we expanded where we normally post our jobs, and we went, nationwide, essentially looking for people. There's limited amounts that I guess the city has done or can do at this point. It's being talked about with HR. It's constantly being reviewed as to what we may need to do, but the city is primarily in order to function smoothly and properly and provide the services we need to provide, we are typically an on-site. It's hard to do some of those services remotely. So it's hard in today's world. A lot of people are looking for some type of hybrid or remote. Not sure. It's one of those things we're looking at, but I'm not sure what we can do to get there in order to provide the services that we need to provide. But it's certainly something that we're looking at because we know it's been a struggle. We don't expect that it's going to go away. So we need to adapt like we have in the past to things. We're in the early stages of that adapting, but hopefully that we can get there.
Yeah, and thank you for that answer. So my whole idea of making sure these positions are filled is someone is better than no one at this point, and I would be more inclined to say have someone be more of a remote worker, but to make sure that position is filled, I would much rather have that than having no one in the position whatsoever. If we're really struggling with stuff like that, I think we do have to adapt in regards to that. Like, for example, I know the county has a grant writer that only comes in once or twice a month, I think it is, and she's mostly remote the entire time. I think it's not just remote work, but it's just other sort of ideas that I think we need to be much more innovative in attracting this population, because it's clear the entire state is going to be having this issue, and we need to be on the ball to make sure that we're ahead of the game as everyone else is trying to fight for these labor specialists in finance. So thank you for that update. I'll let other counselors ask questions.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions, comments?
If no one else has another one. Just question, because you mentioned about challenges and brought to my attention about dealing with cash deposits with mail-in payments, that someone had let me know that, they have a check that wouldn't get cash, and it was over 30 days. Is that something that's an ongoing challenge of making deposits within 24 to 48 hours of the mail-in payments?
Yes, and it's outside of the finance area, but obviously it's related because it's cash related. The records management, which is our treasury and our city clerk department, they have been facing, again, similar staffing struggles. And even when they can say that they've been fully staffed, due to there's a large learning curve in order to learn how to apply payments. It seems like it's fairly straightforward. I get a check, I apply the payment. But with both taxes and utility, the lien laws in the state of Maine kick in. So you have to know if something has been liened, if it has been liened, when you can apply payment, when you can apply payment. Same with the taxes. In addition to motor vehicle, we've seen continual increases in motor vehicle registration. So those customers come in as well. So the walk-in customers historically with the city of Bangor have always been the priority. Not that we discount anybody that mails in a payment, but if you walk through the door, you need to get waited on. So those are typically the priority that gets handled first. And if staffing allows it, we will try to, take someone off the counter set them in front of a computer and start pounding away on payments. They've been struggling to get caught up on that. The election certainly didn't help. With the presidential election, that dedicated a lot of time with that staff because the clerk and the treasury staff are now combined. So a lot of those resources had to get diverted to make sure that the presidential election ran as smoothly as it did, and it ran very smoothly. They did a good job, but that caused some delays as well. So they're digging out from those delays, in addition to a lot of genealogical requests come in. People want copies of birth certificates. And in today's world, a lot of modern ones are scanned in the system, but typically the ones that are being requested are older that are not in their system. So that requires someone to leave the counter, go back to the record storage room and manually search for somebody's birth certificate, get it, make copies, put it back, and then come back and wait on that customer. So coming in to get a copy of a birth certificate may take 20 minutes to a half an hour while the rest of the people in line are still waiting. And now that bucket of mail is still waiting. It's a struggle that has existed for a long time. And when I was overseeing just the Treasury Department and we were separated from city clerk, there would be times that if we were short-staffed, the mail would wait. They're working on it. Currently, we actually in finance brought in some temporary staffing who helped us get our backlog caught up. We are caught up with all of our scanning and attaching of backup and documents and invoices to the system. So we have sort of loaned them out to the Treasury and City Clerk Department. So they're assisting them with putting in some of those payments now. And again, hopefully with the election behind them, they will get that caught up, but there's an issue there of how we need to deal with that based on the number of payments that we get in. We do bill sewer and stormwater on a weekly basis. That's about 850 to 900 bills that go out every week. So those payments are coming in addition to the motor vehicle, in addition to the taxes, in addition to invoice payments. It's an ongoing struggle, but we are certainly all aware of it. They are aware of it, and we're working at what we can do to try to mitigate that. But at the moment, it's getting dug out of the hole without letting it get any deeper.
Okay, just to follow up on that, because what I'm hearing described is the same scenario that led to the material weakness that they found in the last audit.
Yes.
And, it's, the fact that these deposits aren't getting made, but then we found out that the bank reconciliations were taking place. The year ending June 30th, 2024, or sorry, 23, wasn't reconciled until May of the following year, is what, just so you have that.
Yeah, no, I know the comment.
Right, and so I'm worried that we're kind of setting up the same scenario this time. And that January hopeful date of getting the audit back may not be, feasible. I think it's a matter of priority. I mean, it's our city's money. It needs to be deposited.
Mhm.
I understand that we're trying to do the customer facing side of things and those kind of things, but it's the city's money. And I just, the fact that, we're waiting for deposits, I think that maybe just needs to be prioritized a little more. Maybe that's something, a challenge that we can add to this, is something to work on.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yep.
Anyone else have any questions? Counselor Dean?
Yes, I'm encouraged that you're using temporary help. We talked about that before. These temps, are they working only during working hours? Do you have
Yes.
can you do anything with off hours? A lot of people like to work different hours.
The problem that we would have is if they're gonna work off hours, they would still especially in an office like the treasurer, the clerk's office, they have to be here in order to use the system that we have. So then if someone that isn't an employee is here working after hours, an employee would also have to be here at the same time. Now, I do know that the treasury and clerk's office, they have been staying on a regular basis after hours and putting in extra hours to try to get caught up. I assume that will continue. Again, they don't report to the finance department, they report to the city clerk. But I do know that I've seen them here late, for the last few months. Part of that is trying to get the payments caught up and deposits done on a more timely basis. in addition to, the work that was being done for the election. My expectation is that will continue, but it would be difficult to have, the labor, if they were staying and this person wanted to stay, they would be more than happy, more than welcome to do that. But that again would be a decision as to whether or not, the manager of the treasury clerk, area wanted them to stay late and absorb that additional, time and overtime.
Right, so this cannot be done remotely at this point.
No, because of the software that's required in order to apply payments, it can only be done here. It can't be done on a remote basis.
Wouldn't it behoove us to look into more electronic payments so that things could be done remotely?
Yes, I don't disagree. I'm not sure, we just upgraded to a new version of our tax and utility software. I'm not sure where, if they have the ability, all of our previous software versions, there was no opportunity to have electronic payments, be applied to the system. So even if somebody wired us the money, we would still have to do a manual transaction. And I will say that, electronic payments, that we receive from the feds and the state for various things. Great that you get the money, but it's not always identified, and we will spend hours, if not days, sometimes trying to figure out what the payment was actually for. And we do have a concern that if we suddenly start getting in 900 tax or utility payments that are relatively, if everybody's the same minimum bill, we won't know whose bill is actually getting paid. But there are other ways that we can explore, and we're trying to do that now. And it's been slow going, I admit, and they all admit, but that is every avenue that could possibly help us going forward is being reviewed, and we'll get, if it's certainly feasible, will be brought before the committee, and the council if it's something that we really think we should be pursued. Because we do know that it's an issue and it needs to get resolved.
Right.
Councilman,
Yes, I'm curious, has the auditing firm ever given us management reports that state that we have an issue and how to correct it?
Every year they provide a management letter, which was a report of what they have tested, and the findings. Typically in these events, obviously, one of the issues, which has been an ongoing, management letter comment that Councilor Beck has referred to in the past, is segregation of duties, which is always a staffing issue. In a perfect world, we all have 25 people working in our departments, but in reality, that's not gonna happen. So we have to try to mitigate that with what we can. We have other policies and procedures in place to try to make sure that there's no abuse, there's no fraud, and we get done with what we can get done with staffing. Could we use more staffing? Certainly, we could use more staffing. Whether that's in a part-time capacity, whether it's a full-time capacity, but it still comes down to, it's a cost issue and a benefit issue of, we put on more staffing, there's going to be an impact to the tax rate. Knowing the council's, previous review for a number of years, we try to mitigate that impact on the tax rate as much as possible. So we focus on where those staffing issues are needed the most. And those are the areas. Now, when you look back at it, if you're in one of these departments, you think, yeah, the staffing is needed in this department. But when you look at it citywide, we have to prioritize where those staffing needs can be absorbed within a reasonable increase to the taxes, or no increase if we can get there to the taxpayer. But it really comes down to the council as to, if you put forth a directive to, add additional staff, you just have to be prepared that when we come time for the city manager's budget and the impact of the tax rate, that there will be an impact to the tax rate. So we try to do what we can, and that's the the auditor's recommendation obviously is that if you can add staff, you should add staff.
But that doesn't answer the question as to if this has been a comment for several years. It seems like in several years' time, we would have had time to correct it. Management report isn't set there because they want to tell you what to do, but it's because it's suggestions that improve their ability to do their job. So we seem to have been hindering that, which explains why we're always late. So do we adhere to what the management report says? No.
We take it into consideration during the budget process. I will say that the more recent years of being behind have been directly due to the loss of staffing and the turnover, the quicker turnover of staffing before they become fully trained. The city for a long time went through a period of nobody left. We had the same employees for a very, very long time. All of those employees were fully trained. All of those employees knew their job. They did their job. And other than the segregation of duties where the auditors would love to have one person only open the mail and that's all they do. Another person inputs all the mail and that's all they do. And another person takes all the checks and adds them up and that's all they do. That is a very difficult management letter to avoid having unless you can hire a bunch of people. But the backlogs that we're seeing now have happened on occasion throughout the years, but not to the extent that they have in the last couple of years. So if we get to the point of having a fully staffed department and a fully trained department, the anticipation is based on past history when that happens, that some of these issues will resolve themselves. We just haven't been able to get to that point. And adding additional staff that may or may not be fully needed, yes, I'm gonna say it's always needed, but it's full new untrained staff may assist with the problem. But it also might get to the point of once we're caught up, we find we may have too many staff. Or are we now sitting, what else can we do? Are we overstaffed in this department? And we need to look at it later on of why are we paying for 9 people in the treasury department when it appears we only need 7 or 6. I can't say that that's gonna happen, but I think the city would, I know in the finance department, it would be nice to be able to have 6 to 8 months or a year under our belt with a fully trained, full staff. And see what our needs really are in that environment.
So I guess that brings up the second question would be, why are we having such a turnover in staff? Are we doing something wrong that creates an issue?
It started with COVID.
We can't blame
And
COVID for everything.
I understand that we can't blame for everything, but that is when it started. And since then, that has been the result. We're not alone. A lot of municipalities are having trouble filling positions. The pool of people that want to come to work for municipal government or and which, I mean, it's pretty good job security. It's not like, we go under on a regular basis, but it's just, it was a long time. We would have positions posted when I was running the treasury department, we would post a position. We would get 150 to 180 resumes. We post a position, the exact same position today, they might get 20. And for a while, they would only get 7 or 8. It's just the pool of employees are just not there. And that makes it very, very difficult to fill those positions, fill most positions. And not sure what we can do to do that. The city constantly reviews the pay scales as part of the budget process to make sure that we're being competitive, that we're not outpriced. And I see the assistant city manager running to fix anything I may have said.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to share with the committee that a lot of this is HR based. And in fact, a lot of it is clerk and treasury based. And so at the next GovOps meeting in early December, we'll actually be getting into a lot of these details. I don't expect Dave to know a whole lot about national trends around HR and things, but we will dig into that more later. Just wanted to make sure you're all aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Maybe we can move on. I think in your report, you explained part of this and in previous for the new counselors, it was a good review, but I think it's, lack of staff and the issues that not only we as a city have, we're aware of them. And I agree, we have to be a little more proactive and maybe creative, but we're aware of them. And thank you for your explanation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Maybe we should move on with the agenda and Looks like on the agenda, we have, consent.
So our first item is a consent item. This is a used vehicle purchase. Previous councils have given staff the authority that if they find a used vehicle that will meet our needs, that we can go ahead and purchase that vehicle and then come to the committee through the consent agenda for approval. And that is the particular situation here. The police department has found a used vehicle that our detectives can use in the police department. It's a 2023 Hyundai Sonata. And it had a price of $27,608. It will be replacing an old vehicle that will be sold at auction, and met all of our needs. So the city went ahead and purchased it. So we're looking for retroactive approval for that purchase.
And do you need a vote for this?
Yes, please.
Okay, so can we have, Council Leonard?
I'm not on the committee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
Second.
there, I think we don't have to do a vote by person, do we?
No, not at all.
Okay,
Everybody's
you
here.
got what you need, thank you.
Yep, thank you. So our next item is to waive the bid process for the boiler replacement at the Central Fire Station. Last November, the city did put out an RFP for boiler replacement. And the boilers are about 50 years old, inefficient, they're obsolete, it's difficult to get parts for. So initially, they had a approved budget of $100,000 for the project. All of the bids came in well over the 100,000. So the project was put on hold and an additional 75,000 was requested during the fiscal year 25 budget. So there's a total budget of 175,000. I spoke with the fire department and I suggested that instead of us putting out a new bid, that we reach out to the bidders at the time to see if they would be willing to hold their price. So we reached out, we had 3 bids at the time. We reached out, 2 of those companies replied back and indicated that they would not hold the price, but they did provide a new quote, which was higher than the original price that they provided in 2023. 2 companies that we knew did boiler replacements that did not submit a bid were Penobscot Temperature Controls and Ogden Mechanical. Penobscot Temperature had been our primary service vendor on these boilers. But during this bidding process, there was a period of time that they were unable to provide those services. So they had contracted out to Ogden Mechanical to be a subcontractor for them. Ogden didn't submit a proposal because they assumed that Penobscot Temperature would, and they didn't want to be in direct competition with somebody they were doing subcontracting for. So staff reached out to both of those companies as well as the original bidders without providing or disclosing any information. Penobscot Temperature Controls indicated they were not interested in the project, but Ogden Mechanical proposed a price of $110,022.98, which is well under the approved budget and well under the other 2 quotes received by the other companies. So we're looking to approval to waive the bid price and contract directly with Ogden Mechanical. They've been doing the service work on the system. They know the system, they're familiar with it. And their price is well within the budget that was approved, so we would like permission to move forward with them.
Okay, do we have a motion to waive bid process?
So moved. Second.
Okay,
Thank you. Our next item is for an aircraft de-icer. We did go out to bid to replace one of our de-icing vehicles at the airport. We only received 1 bid. It was for $527,573 from Global Ground Support. But thankfully it was under budget. We did have a budget of $550,000. They did offer either an option to buy or lease the de-icer, but where it came in under budget, staff would recommend that we just buy it outright. In the long term, leasing, even though it would save money on a year-to-year basis, in the long run, we would end up paying more money for the same vehicle. And we do know that the vehicle will last longer than 5 years. The old one is a 2005, and so we'll sell that at an auction. So we're looking for approval, and this would go to full council next week for final approval where it's over the $250,000 limit.
do I have a motion for the aircraft de-icer?
I'll make a motion for the de-icer.
Second.
Any conversation or questions that you have? Oh, okay.
Thank you. Our next item is a single axle plow truck for the Public Works Department. We did go out to bid for this vehicle. We received a number of different vehicles with various options, 4 different companies with a couple of different bid specs depending on the types of plows or bodies that they put on the vehicle. The low bid was for $244,340 from Freightliner of Maine. Where we've used Freightliner in the past, very happy with them. It is within the budget that we have. So we're looking for approval to move forward with the purchase of this plow truck from Freightliner of Maine for $244,000.
Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Our next item is the tandem axle plow truck with the dump body. Again, we went out to bid. As you can see from the bid tab, we received a number of bids from about 5 companies, I think it was, with various options, also depending on the type of plow and the type of body that was being presented. The Freightliner of Maine had the low overall bid at $259,739. This vehicle and the one we just talked about are the 2 vehicles that were intended to be purchased with the budget of $427,000. So they're a little bit over that budgeted amount, but there are savings from previous trucks that we have bought that we can use to make up the shortfall of $76,000. So we're looking for permission to move forward with Freightliner of Maine, where this is over the $250,000. This would go on full council for next week.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I actually had a question before that. Could you explain how the surplus works? Like where we say savings from vehicles, like from years previous?
Yes, so what we do is we will, depending on how the vehicles are intended to be funded. A lot of times with these vehicles, because they're large, they could be funded through bond orders, or they could be funded or previous bonds that we've issued already to buy vehicles. And they go into a division that is for plow truck specifically purchases. So if we have some money that may be saved over from a previous purchase, it sits in that account and could be used if we're going over a little bit on a future purchase.
Okay, and that's what that's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make a motion. Second.
Okay, so it passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is a light duty pickup. I will say the next 4 vehicles were all part of the same multi-bid that we put out. We put on RFP for multiple vehicles. So the bid tab is at the very end of the 4 vehicles, if you're wondering why it wasn't after each one. So this first one was a electric vehicle for a light duty pickup truck for the Public Works. We went out to bid. We received 3 bids related to that vehicle, the low bid being $53,095 from Darlings Ford. And for 2005 Lightning Ford Lightning Pro. That is within the budget that was approved to buy 3 vehicles within the 25 capital budget. So we're looking forward to looking for approval to go ahead and move forward to Darlings Ford to purchase this vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is actually 2 vehicles. These are the remaining 2 of the 3 vehicles that were going to be purchased within the $215,000 budget. These are 2 4-wheel drive light duty pickup trucks, again for Public Works. Darlings Ford was the low bidder. And the 2 vehicles combined would be $128,656. So looking for approval to move forward with that purchase.
Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Your turn.
Thank you. Our next vehicle is a 1-ton dump truck, also for Public Works. Again, went out to bid as part of that combined vehicle bid. The low bidder was O'Connell Auto Park for $74,216, which came in under the budget of $75,000. And looking for approval to move forward with that purchase.
Okay, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our last vehicle is a 1-ton dump truck for Parks and Rec. Again, part of that combined bid. The low bidder was again O'Connell Auto Park for $61,798, which came in under the $80,000 budget that was approved in the fiscal year 25. Looking for approval.
Oh, can I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Thank you.
Second.
question. So with it looked like, lost my tab on there, but the trucks are the same truck. I mean, why is there such a difference in between the last bid and this bid?
Wow.
The plow truck one?
Oh, one has a plow.
One's a and a crew cab and one's not.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Any other questions? So our next item is the biosolids disposal agreement for our water quality management. So the treatment plant produces anywhere from 5,500 to 6,500 wet tons of biosolids as a byproduct of treating wastewater. And due to legislation enacted in 2023 that prohibits the reuse of those biosolids, sending them to a landfill is our only option. I know that biosolids has been discussed with the council on numerous previous occasions. Our current contract with New England Waste Services of Maine, which is DBA Casella Organics, expired on September 30th. It was temporarily extended to allow us to negotiate a new contract or look for other options. And because of the very specific disposal requirements and in order to comply with the state law, doing a normal RFP process is not really feasible in this type of service. So staff did look out to and explore possibilities for alternative landfill options. There was one other available option that we could choose outside of Casella Organics. But their proposed cost was roughly 35% higher, or about $300,000 a year higher than what we would pay under Casella. So the recommendation is that we contract with New England Waste Services of Maine, DBA Casella Organics, at a cost of $142 per wet ton, which we anticipate will be covered through the approved fiscal year budget. It's approximately $800,000 to $850,000 a year in biosolids that we expect. So that cost, we believe, depending on the year, dry years, same with sort of plowing. On the good years, we save money. If it's a dry year, wet years, we may have an issue, but we budget for an average year. Assuming an average year, we should have enough money in the budget to cover that. So we're looking for approval to do a 3-year contract with New England Waste Services. This would go on to full council for next week, and it'll be under new business. Just so that if anybody wants to just make a discussion during the council meeting.
Okay, do we have any questions?
Yes.
Council Dean?
Thank you. Just a observation, 142 per wet ton, is that an average amount for this type of service?
That
Know what
is,
it is throughout the state?
I'm going to let Amanda cover that.
That is significantly lower than a lot of communities pay. It's a little bit higher than some communities pay, so it depends on, being in Bangor, we don't have as many tons locally, if you, in the local communities produced as, say, a Portland, where they have more access to different haulers. Southern Maine, they have access, some communities have access to haul and dispose of them out of state in New Hampshire. So we are a little bit more limited. I'd say we're probably middle of the road on the per ton price.
Thank you.
What was the previous price we've been paying with Casella?
I was just trying to look it up. It was like 134 and
Yeah,
change.
yes.
It has fluctuated. If you remember,
Right,
it's fluctuated tremendously
I
with the
looked at the
legislative
recent-
changes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I
this is the
just looked at
lowest
the recent
increase.
bills. It's a little bit higher, but it's not that much higher than what we're
Yeah.
currently
It's
paying.
about
It's 100.
6.5%, and that's the least increase that we've seen in about 4 years.
Question, so the other company that we looked at, obviously more expensive, but do they use the same landfill that Casella uses?
No,
So they have a different one?
no, that one was, the only other disposal option for us is Norwich Walk Waste Management. So I was in talks with them. They're actually building a new biosolids drying facility that I was hopeful for, but the difference in cost was so significant that would be detrimental to our sewer rates.
Sure. I mean, this might be a question better answered at another committee, but just knowing that we had that issue with, basically being held over a barrel by all the situation, is it possible to keep them kind of on the speed dial, so to speak, should this other contract not work out?
Yeah, so yes, they are on my speed dial and we're still in communication. There is a lot in play right now between potential legislative action, potential sunsetting of some legislative pieces. And there's a lot of interest in a lot of different technologies right now throughout the state of Maine. There are potentially some digesters coming online in Brunswick in the next couple of years. There is a lot at play, so I'm on speed dial with many parties.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Do you need motion? This is gonna be on for new business?
Yeah, we still need a motion for the
Okay,
committee to approve.
okay. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. Our next item is for phase 3 of Randolph Drive sewer improvements. This project began back in 2020, and the work was done by Lou Silver Incorporated. And it's for Griffin Road, Bowling and Randolph Drive. And in 2022, Lou Silver became aware that the city had intended to do an extension of the Randolph Drive work, essentially a phase 2. They submitted a proposal to our engineering department that they would hold the prices from the 2020 contract. At the time, the unit prices were lower than what we've been getting for bids at the time, so the city agreed to contract with Lou Silver for that piece of it. We are now looking to do phase 3. Lou Silver once again has become aware of that, and they have approached the city again and indicated that they would, if we treated this as a change order to that original 2020 contract, they would once again hold their prices from that original contract. Those contracts, again, confirmed by staff, are lower than what we're seeing in more recent projects. So they proposed a bid using those pricing, and it would be about the estimated cost would be $507,071, which is within the budgeted amount for the work that we had planned on doing. So staff is looking for approval to contract with Lou Silver as a change order to the original 2020 contract to hold the prices for phase 3 of the Randolph Drive sewer improvements. And this again would be on full council for next week.
Any questions?
Yeah, just a question, to talk about, how exactly did they become aware?
They will sometimes just call and say, hey, what projects do you guys have coming in the next year?
Okay,
And they're not the only contractors that do that. They'll try to reach out to see if the city has any major construction projects or separation projects coming up, so they can plan on what projects they may want to bid on in our area versus other communities.
okay, and then this one didn't go to bid because the prices were so good?
Correct.
Okay, just from a transparency standpoint, I'm wondering,
I agree. We should not be reaching out directly to any contractor.
Sure.
They approached us, they asked what we were doing, and then they came back in and said, hey, we already did 2/3 of this work. We'll finish it up for the same price. Prices locked in from 5 years ago are pretty good. So it seemed to be in the best interest of the city to go ahead and move forward, comparing it to prices that we've been getting on other bids that we have done an RFP for.
Any other questions? Can we have a motion to approve a change order for Lou Silver in the amount of $507,071?
so moved.
A second.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our final bid tonight is for the Hammond Street Storm Drain Extension. We did go out to bid for this particular project. And this is to improve drainage on Hammond Street and North Hilder Street. And the bids range from $571,000 to $840,000. That was an original bid that was done in September. That included adding in a left turn lane onto Hammond Street, but all of those were well over the approved budget that we had. So the bids were modified and to change the scope of the bids. And those modified bids we contacted, with Eastwood Contractors, who was the low bidder from the original one, changed the scope. They provided a new proposal of $438,020 which is just the storm drain extension without the left-hand turn. That fell within the budgeted amount for the project. So the recommendation is to move forward with Eastwood Contractors with 438. Again, this would go to full council.
Any questions? Can I have a motion?
Removed.
Thank you,
Second,
thank you.
Thank you. And our last item tonight is a resolve, which will be on full council for next week for first reading. And this is to accept and appropriate $2,127,000 in passenger facility charges, PFC money through the Federal Aviation Administration for the airport, for the purchase and installation and design of a passenger boarding bridge at gate 11. The approval to apply for this PFC funding came to the committee earlier this year. The funding has been awarded, so this will be our resolve to accept and appropriate that money. And again, it will go to council for first reading, but we do need committee approval for it.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
second,
Thank you. That is all I have for the night.
There isn't anything else. I guess with that, that can conclude our meeting for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, man.